All right, welcome back to the Tactus Media Podcast. I'm very excited to be specialed by a guest. No, I have Bassam Tarazi coming onto the podcast as a special guest. He is a schooled mechanical nuclear engineer whose career has spanned the worlds of mortgage banking, construction management, consulting, public speaking, and marketing. This was a really fun episode where we got to dive into just what it means to be like a creative or working in the marketing industry or just like branching out there and pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, which is a really challenging thing to do. But Bassam is a seasoned entrepreneur. His latest venture is Ready, Set, Finish, where he helps businesses and individuals go from here's what I'm working on to here's what I did. So really moving that needle and taking action. This is next to his day job as a head of marketing at 71 and Change, where they lead companies through a myriad of organizational changes. And we dive into that into the episode of what are some of those big things, big hurdles that they help organizations tackle. He is the author of The Accountability Effect, In 5 Years You'll Be Wrong, and Borders, Bandits, and Baby Wipes. He or his work has been featured in Backpacker, Forbes, Young Entrepreneur, Good, and many other outlets. A wanderer at heart, he's also traveled to 73 countries and 7 continents, having had such absurd experiences such as getting to Everest Base Camp and the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro, driving from London to Mongolia in a 42 horsepower car, living on an Alaskan glacier for 8 days, surviving a run-in with Fidel Castro, and being hunted by pig-tailed macaque in the jungles of Borneo. Long stories, he'll need some scotch for those. That is Bassam's intro. When he's not doing the things that make for a good story one day, he enjoys time with his wife in Portland, Oregon. I'm really excited to have Bassam on this episode. I think the first time we met was I had heard about his TED Talk. So this is the first TED Talk speaker. And so I'm just in awe and blown away because that is a huge accomplishment. All of these things are huge accomplishments. And I'm going on. Let's just start the episode. Let's get things rolling. Welcome to the Tactus Media Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Cargill. I'm excited to explore a ton of different topics with you. It's going to be a lot of fun. In the past, we've talked about video marketing, brand, strategy. There's still going to be a lot of that, but we also want to tackle some issues that are happening in Portland, fun concepts, as well as some engaging stories. All right, let's kick it. Thank you, everyone, for jumping back onto the Tactus Media Podcast. I'm joined today by Bassam Tarazi. Thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Brian.
Yeah, taking a break from, we had all the elements today here in the Northwest. I think
we had them all. We had them all today. It's a little bit of I told my wife it feels like Pacific Northwest Miami at times. There's like thunderstorms and hail and sun and clouds and yeah.
Yeah, we just need some of that humidity.
Exactly.
Gosh, yeah. How long have you guys been in the Northwest for?
We've been here for just coming up to 5 years. Coming up to 5 years now.
Wow, congrats.
Thanks.
That's pretty cool because that's about the time when I moved here as well, like 2015, and then got connected and then heard about you in 2016 with your TED Talk down in Salem.
Yeah.
10,000 miles of planned grit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then one of the biggest things that really stood out to me and why I wanted to bring you on the podcast was you did a video, and anyone who dances on the beach to Coldplay is a friend of mine. And so I thought that was the coolest thing, and it always stuck in my mind.
That's really funny for everyone listening. My buddy and I, when we were living in New York, we just did this spoof video of Coldplay's Yellow. And if you haven't seen the video, the entire video is in slow motion, and Chris Martin looks like he's singing. It's in slow motion, but his mouth is keeping up with the song. And so the only way to do that is to sing at double speed. And you slow it down. So we tried to mimic that, which was a lot of fun.
It was amazing. And you're like grabbing logs and throwing them in the ocean and stuff. Yeah. And I didn't know that's a pretty cool filming technique for people that don't know this. So when you were recording, you were actually mouthing it double speed. So
correct. So I actually had headphones on while we were recording, and I had it at double speed in my ear so that I could keep up exactly at 2x speed, right? Because if you're off by a little bit and you reduce it by half, you're sometimes off. So it literally had to be 2x speed. So at home, I had to practice like getting my jaw I mean, not that the song, it's not a rap song. It's not, you know, it's not that fast, but still it like having to practice like how quick the words come. Yeah. And then you slow it down to half speed, and then your mouth is going at the speed of the song.
That's amazing, because I don't think people realize that and have appreciation. So you did put in practice, and those are all the fun like little video techniques, you know, for the people that pay attention to this podcast. It used to be more like video marketing focused, and so a lot of people that are listeners are probably a little savvy around the camera. So folks at home, try that. Do double speed and then slow it down, and you'll be at normal speed.
Yeah, it just is a cool look. You just look cooler. Everything looks cooler in slow mo. So it looks cool.
Totally. Yeah. Do you want to tell us just kind of what you've been up to? I'm going to read your intro at some point, but maybe kind of like what's happening in your world right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's happening in my world is, I mean, no surprise. I think a lot of people, my wife and I, are looking to buy a house in this crazy market. So we have that going on, which is a part of our life right now, which is wild and crazy here in early 2022. Work-wise, I'm the head of marketing for a change management consulting firm. We help big companies manage big changes, any kind of organizational change. So I run marketing for them, but backgrounds, you know, engineering, and just gave a keynote talk at a leadership conference. I have an online course. I'm always writing. So I'm a tinkerer. I like tinkering in things and messing around. And as you said, my TED talk was called Planned Grit. I like injecting discomfort into my life, you know, because I think I live a very fortunate life. So the discomfort I get to inject in my life is not really death defying or that uncomfortable, but it's fun and helps me grow.
100%. That's the only way to grow, right? Is through discomfort. Sadly, like you have to suffer and then you change and then you grow.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And then you left out nuclear engineer in there. So I think you should squeeze that in somehow.
So I was my degree, I was a mechanical engineer out of college. And then my first job out of school is I was a nuclear engineer at Pearl Harbor. So I was working for the Department of Defense. So in essence, they bring you in and you get like this crash course into nuclear engineering. So a lot of my job when I first started was just, you're in a classroom, basically getting this like bombardment of the nuclear training to, you know, support the mechanical engineering schooling that I had. So yeah, we refueled the reactors of nuclear submarines down at Pearl Harbor, which is pretty crazy to say. Every time I say it, it's like, wait, did I do that? And it's like, yeah, I was 22, 23 when I was down there. And it's wild. It was a wild experience for sure.
That's amazing. Yeah, you've lived like multiple lives, it seems like, reading your bio, and I did some research on my end. And for folks at home, if you can hear little rocks and little pebbles hitting the ceiling, it's because it's hailing here in the Northwest, as we talked about earlier with the weather. Yeah, and just maybe you can like, I do want to talk about 71 and change at some point, but maybe you can lean into like discomfort and like what that means to you, or like, you have some tips for people on getting into that space.
Yeah, I mean, I think we live a very comfortable life. I think the world and society wants us to be comfortable and convenient, right? That is what is given to us. I joke that every single app you're on, every single thing you're using was built by a whole bunch of people who had to sit on their butts and do something really hard so that now you sit on your butt and do what they want you to do, right? It's like we are all pining and clawing for your attention. And so attention is pretty easy to give away. And so the world will fill your life very simply with anything to consume whatever you want, but to do something that you set out to do, something creative, something unknown, something that you haven't done before, by definition, you are a newbie, and by definition, you are going to be uncomfortable. And so I think I embrace that discomfort. I think a lot of people try to orchestrate and architect and create these bubbles around themselves that I joke we are trying to not mess up and then succeed. It's like, well, no, you have to try first, right? So at some point you have to move. So I always try to find ways like, how can I inch forward? How can I make just tiny bits of progress? And get a little bit uncomfortable. And that's just kind of where we find ourselves.
Heck yeah. I appreciate that you're preaching that message, because it's really easy to design your life in a way that it just like, it feels comfortable, you know, or it feels like you're just going through the motions and you're not growing through that. And I found that I was unhappy. A little bit background on me. I was in corporate America for almost 4 years, and I was like, man, this is not for me doing this every day. But it was comfortable. You know, you had the paycheck, you had something to look forward to, but I don't know. There's a little bit, being an entrepreneur, maybe we can dive into this a little bit too as well, because being an entrepreneur, there's a bit of risk that goes with that, which can be scary, but a little bit exciting as well.
For sure. I mean, I think we all have, each one of us has a different appetite for discomfort and comfort. And believe me, I love comforts. Like I love convenience. There are things, you know, I love more than anything, you know, but it's like, even injecting like 30 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes a day, even if you do have a corporate job, of discomfort, of just creating something, of just leaning into that unknown is sometimes enough. And for me, a lot of times it's fuel. So I have a corporate job. I've been able to create a lot of wiggle room there at that work. I've earned the right to create a little bit of elbow room for myself, but I still have a job, right? And there's still things I have to do and places I have to be, but I still always find that time. And again, even those 30 minutes, those 60 minutes to create. And for some people like you, it's like being just a full-fledged entrepreneur, which I have before. I have had my own coaching and consulting business on my own. And there is a rush to that. It is every day is tactile. Every day is like, you know, where's that next business coming from? And it's exciting and also exhausting, right? I mean, there's times where you wish you could go into the cocoon of comfort and have a weekend off and not have to worry about anything. So I always find for people, some people love the true unknown and that, like, you know, that grit of entrepreneurship where it's like every day they're gonna create their own thing. Some people like having that job, like having that 9 to 5, but I would still say no one wants to be a robot, and no one wants to just like live out in the savannah on their own all day, every day. We all want a little bit of the other side. You want a little bit of comfort and you want a little bit of discomfort and adventure. And so I think for people, it's like just being honest with yourself. I think one of the things you have to be careful of, I think this country or this world pushes a lot about just chase your passion and chase your goals and start your own business, but it doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't have to be for everybody. I think you can be an entrepreneur at your job, at your company. You can find ways to be like super creative, which I've done a lot in my career. I've been like, just go mess around, just like create something when someone didn't ask you for something and see what the reaction is. You know what I mean? And so sometimes it's just not being afraid to break the little boxes we're put in at work, and you're not going to get fired. People love, you know, if you're creating and using your brain. But again, I think we sometimes wait for that permission. But I joke, no one's thinking of creative ways to give you money, and no one's thinking of creative ways to give you time off or to fulfill yourself. Like, you have to lean into that stuff.
That's such good advice. And yeah, I'm a full big fan of entrepreneurship too. If your company kind of gives you that wiggle room and gives you
Totally
some of the license to do that, which is awesome. Especially, yeah, like you mentioned, everyone has different levels of what feels comfortable to them. And so just, yeah, breaking outside of that. And I love that you say like 15, you know, breaking into a time slot, like 15 to 45 minutes a day, whatever that is. For me, sometimes like going out and rollerblading is pretty discomforting.
Like, so I did my big thing now is like this idea of like owning your verbs, right? I mean, it's a pretty simple concept to think about, but if time passes, your experience of that time, even if it's a minute, can be described as an action verb, right? What were you doing for the last minute? I was napping, sleeping, reading, writing, rollerblading, thinking, scrolling, watching, right? Our lives are verbs, constantly verbs. And so it's finding out a way, how can you own a specific verb? You can't write a book in one sitting, right? You can't film a movie in one sitting, but can you press record for 30 minutes? Can you write for 30 minutes? So record and write are two verbs you can own, but like plan a party, direct a movie, like you can't do that in a sitting. And your brain, when it thinks you're about to do something too much, it's like, that sounds crazy. Why don't we just watch TV or scroll through Instagram? So it's literally tricking. We are adult children. We cannot. I have to trick myself. I have to set timers. I put airplane mode and set a 30-minute timer. It sounds so silly, but just the action of doing that gives me the freedom to go, oh, I have a life raft coming within 30 minutes. Like, I'll be saved, right? I can do something for 30 minutes. And then it allows me to just go and explore and figure it out. And then when the timer goes off, sometimes I'm like, holy crap, that was really quick. Or that felt like an hour. Well, you know what? I had to wrestle with that thing at some point. So I might have been working on an argument that I was contradicting myself. I didn't know what I wanted to say, and hemming and hawing. Okay, for 25 minutes, I didn't know what the hell I was saying, but I figured it out in the last 5 minutes. And it's like, all right, I might have only gotten 5 minutes of writing done, but I had to get through the muck of the 25 minutes. And the only way I could have done that is if I just gave myself permission to do that. It's a long roundabout way of like this idea of owning your verbs. I just try to like have people break down to like, what is the smallest common denominator of that verb that you can do right now? You want to be a stand-up comedian? You know what you have to do? Write jokes. You know what I mean? Like, that's the verb you can own. You're not going to be on stage tomorrow, but could you write a joke a day? You know, you can start there.
Totally. And building up that like kind of, they're their own muscle, you know, and the muscle is somewhere in your mind that you're like kind of getting those grooves refined.
And it's not about reaching the goal. A lot of times it's just like increasing your confidence. In the beginning, it's not about directing a movie or filming. It's like, no, can I gain confidence with this tool? You know, can I convince myself that I'm someone who could do this? And so, like you said, it's that like creating that track record of do is what I call it. Like, hey, I've done this. I continue to do this. You know, you can't run a marathon tomorrow, but you can go running. You know, you could run for 30 minutes, you know, and so convincing yourself, hey, I'm the kind of person who could run a marathon because I've been running, you know. So
yeah, building, and that confidence is so huge, and you only get that through action. And I think I read somewhere on your site is you get data through doing.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really good advice.
And it's funny, it's like Ann Patchett, she's one of my favorite authors. She said, especially when it comes to writing, like for instance, writing, we think like, oh, why I should be able to just write, you know, like, why can't I write better? And she says, you would never expect a pianist who has never played before to be in a symphony the next day, right? Or violinist. It's like, no, you get better by doing. And so it's that constant, it's so funny. Like you slap yourself in the face sometimes and go, oh yeah, that's right. Of course I get better by doing. But the world presents us with images of people who have it all figured out, or they cut or, you know, they somehow did things faster and they know the secrets. And if you knew the secrets, you could get it too. I always joke, I go, the top one thing that top 10 lists are hiding is the work, right? Like, yeah, bullet points are great, but in between the bullet points, just like a job description, your job is what's in between the bullet points, you know, and that's where the mess is. That's where like, you still have to do the work.
Totally. You have to cut your teeth and put in the hours. I think
it's just like, there's no way around it. Like any way you slice it, there's no way around. Like experience leads to skill, you know, and that's just how it happens.
Yeah, it's kind of twofold. I think willing to be a fool and be a failure in the beginning and be okay to like laugh at yourself, or just know that like this is like for like sports, if you're losing or, you know, you don't make the right, the perfect shot in a game, like all of that is something, those are all the greats had to experience falling on their face many, many times. But the reason they're great is they got up one more time. Correct.
And there's a great term, M. Night Shyamalan, the director, he's used this term that, when he in the beginning, when he was picking up a camera and messing around, he's like, I just needed to create a space to safely fail. You know, he's like, I didn't call myself a filmmaker or a director yet. He's like, I was just understanding the camera. You know, I was understanding like pacing and this, that, whatever. And then, so he gave himself permission to be like, all right, yeah, I just need to keep tweaking and learning this thing and messing around. And I joke, I go, you got to be able to do that while still getting some feedback eventually, right? At some point you have to say, here, take a look. That's the problem with creating, is we want to be good, but at some point we need somebody to take a look at what we've done. And if that's the moment we're like, uh-oh, I could be judged, right? Someone might think it's not good, or, you know, it's the analogy of missing that shot, and someone's going to see that I missed the shot, but it's the only way. And I think on top of that is like surrounding yourself with people who can give you that critical but loving feedback. You know, people who are like, hey, great job. Like you tried, like you worked hard. If your friends are like making fun of you, or why are you doing that? That's stupid. Then it becomes really hard to create, you know, if you don't have that safety net, that little bit of bubble wrap you need sometimes, you know, in the early days.
Totally. And that's a good point of who you kind of surround yourself. They like kind of brushes off on you as a creative, especially.
Yeah, you are who you surround yourself with. It's incredible so my buddy has this thing, he calls it allies versus thieves. And he says, write down the 5 names of the people you spend the most time with. And then next to their names, write down, when you think of that person spending time with them, do your shoulders pull back and you smile and you think, oh, they're an energy giver? Or do you kind of shoulder down and you're like, oh man, Jason, he kills me. You know, like we all have friends like that where it's like, man,
we're family even.
We're family. Exactly. That's a little bit of a drag. And so, yes, we can't disown family and friends. You never want to like just cut them out of your life. But sometimes we have to be intentional of being like, hey, this person doesn't fuel me, but I met somebody new who's also creating that I actually actively want to spend more time like helping them, and they help me because we need that. And so, yeah, I've had friends in my life that I've had to, you know, set off to sea in the sense of like, I didn't invest as much time anymore because I just felt like again, they weren't bad people. They weren't, nothing like that was happening, but I wasn't getting what I felt I needed, you know, in that relationship. And, you know, it's messy, but we need that at times.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, who's what, like, is there a vampire? Are they sucking your energy, or are they providing it to you?
Exactly.
And then social media, I feel like, has added a whole other like element to this. Like, I know for myself, like in the early stages of social media, I would experiment and put myself out there. And then if even one person said something kind of bad, I was like, I wouldn't post again for months and sometimes even years because of that one comment.
Yeah. It's brutal. I mean, I think social media, I mean, obviously it's no surprise. I mean, we all know, I mean, teenagers, they're suffering with anxiety and depression and stuff because it is like this constantly on, right? I was born in 1980. Like, I got to live a childhood of just like free play, fun, and like I didn't know what the hell my friends were doing, or I didn't know what anybody was doing like out in the world. You know, you could just be. And so I think social media is yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, I empathize. My nephews are, you know, 15 and 13 and 10, and they're kind of and I'm thinking, man, the pressure to be always on, and that judgment, and afraid, you know, afraid to be judged. And I feel it too, right? Some people will write about my post, or say something about me, or, you know, just write something really hurtful. And I think you gotta remind yourself in that moment that it's actually not about you, right? That person is actually sad and upset about something, and it's just their way of taking it out because they're not creating in the world, or there's something else that's holding them back. And so it's just their way, and it doesn't make it any easier. But yeah, I've kind of, like, to be honest, I pulled the ripcord a little bit on social media. Like, I used to be on Twitter a lot. I'm like, I'm never on Twitter. I'm on Instagram to keep in touch with friends and stuff. But like, I see some people out there posting stuff out there, and like you said, like creating and like putting something out in the world and then getting smashed for it. It's like, man, that is tough. That, like, creating is hard enough. Creating is hard enough.
I would tell people, give yourself permission to use the block button.
Yeah, totally.
Be okay, like, if someone's harassing you, giving you a bad time, or they're like stifling your creativity, like, it's totally okay to shed them.
Like, yeah, they don't deserve that. Yeah, there's a difference between if someone's like, hey, can I give you some constructive feedback, or hey, can I let you know how I experienced that, or, you know what I mean? If someone's willing to have a conversation, of course, we should all hear different points of view. But if people are just like, just slinging the mud right from the start, and you're like, you know what, you don't deserve. I chatted with a woman actually this past weekend. I was in Chicago giving a talk, and she said, you know what I do? I actually find a way to celebrate the hate. She's like, I just find a way to laugh about it, and I share it with my friends. And like, so if you can kind of like, and it takes time and skill to do that. But I was director of business strategy for a company in New York. And I was like, at the time, also heading our recruiting. And so I would kind of, you know, be the gate holder, who came in, who got, you know, initial interview, and then they go down the route. It's a big construction management firm. And I got this Christmas card, like literally handwritten in the mail, open it up, like happy holidays on the front, and on the back was like one of the most vitriol laden notes about like how awful I was and wished I was dead. I mean, but literally by hand wrote this whole note, and I kept it. I always keep it as a reminder of like, A, I might not be as cool as I think I am, but B, it just kind of makes me laugh. Like, man, this person was this upset that they took this much time to handwrite a letter. You're just kind of like, I don't know. You just shrug your shoulders.
Yeah, they took the time, they thought about it, they molded it over. Like, how many hours did they spend? Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're kind of like, man, if I really ruffled your feathers that much, A, I'm sorry, right? I don't even know, and they never signed it, so there was never a name on it. So I which was even kind of crappier. I was like, all right, you put all this time in, and now it's anonymous. I don't even know who this was, but yeah, finding a way to be able to laugh about that. So I think early days in creating, you have to know whose opinion matters, right? So if you're putting something out totally into the ether, yeah, even more so than like negative feedback, sometimes there's no feedback, right? And sometimes the crickets are even worse. You're like, does anybody know I'm out here? So a lot of times in the beginning, I joke with people, like, especially in writing, or say you're making films, or if you're making some short film, I'm like, all right, the first 10 little vignettes you're filming, they're for you. No one's gonna watch them. Just that's between you and you. You know what I mean? Like, try to get to the 11th, try to get to the 12th. You'll learn something new there, and then you'll find your tribe. You know what I mean? You'll find some folks who will support that creation.
Yeah, that's amazing advice, because yeah, just getting the confidence, putting yourself out there, but starting small and like giving yourself permission to fail all along the way. Or those are all like kind of things you have to learn as a creative, but it's a tough thing because I don't know if you feel this with your writing, but like a part of you is part of that. I mean, you did spend time that you could have been spending doing a million other things, but like part of your soul, you know, part of your baby or whatever is in there.
Absolutely.
And so like separating yourself, it's a challenge as a creative, but then being able to like, when you get feedback, laugh it off is, I think that's kind of the next level as a creative.
Totally. No, you hit the nail on the head. I think it's being able to separate your creation from your identity. And it's not easy. Like you said, when you make a film or you're filming something, you're writing, you're like, man, A, you don't know how much time I put into this, and B, to get that critical feedback. I think sometimes it's like, it's not about me, right? It's about my writing. It's not about Bassam. It's like, hey, here's feedback on what you wrote. And of course I get defensive right away, right? It's just that natural thing. But I think taking that deep breath and going, all right, this person might have a great point of view on whatever, on a storytelling aspect or whatever it is. But I think you're right in knowing that like, it is a little piece of us that's out there. And especially a film or words, we're not always there to defend it. You know, like you send out that film or you send out that article and someone thinks a certain way and they write you back and you're like, oh, but wait, no, you missed the point. That's not what I meant, but you're not there to defend your baby. But I think it's like, as much as possible, I think some of the problems people run into in creating is that they tied so much of their identity into this thing. It's literally an extension of them. And I'm like, you gotta cut the umbilical cord a little bit. Yes, it is your offspring, but it's not you anymore. And so again, easier said than done. But you know, I joke like, your job is to create. That's the verb you can own, create. How it's received, the verb to receive in that isn't yours to own. So unfortunately, like as a creator, it's always your move first. And Brene Brown said, I love her quote. She said, your experience in life cannot exceed your willingness to be vulnerable. So if you want this kind of life, but you're only willing to be this vulnerable, it's just not going to happen, right? So it's vulnerability first and experience follows. It's just a crappy byproduct of trying to create something, you know. People, like, you have to choose you first. You have to believe in you first before anybody else can. There's a lot of people who I say, like, you don't want to write a book. You just want to walk into a room and have people clap, you know, like that's what you want, right? We want to be lauded. We want an easy life. But I'm like, that's just not how it works. You know, that's not how it works.
That's such a good quote. And I never even thought about it that way, but it makes sense that, yeah, a lot of people have lofty goals, but they're not willing to put themselves out there because we live like in an input output world. So you're only going to get what you kind of put out there.
Yeah. It's like, we want the result of the verb, right? We want like the writing of the book. We are imagining the book deal and the book promotional tour or the red carpet if you're filming something, or you know what I mean, or whatever that award is. That's what we actually want. No one wants to climb the mountain. They want to have climbed the mountain. You know what I mean? Like the present tense sucks because that's where the mess is, right? To film, to press record, to edit, to sound edit, right? All those things is work, and it's the thing you do when no one's looking, and that's hard, you know. But that's 99% of your life. I joke as creators, like 99% of your life will be what you do on a Wednesday night when no one's looking. You know, the claps and maybe the awards and the accolades. Yeah, it's nice when you get them, but it's about 1% or less of your life, right? Most of your time is in the Wednesday night when no one's looking.
And the grittiness of it.
Yeah.
And I know, like if it was a movie, you know, they only showed like the highlights of a movie, they compress it into 2 hours, but like someone actually had to live a whole lifetime for them to make that movie.
That's
and so,
right.
You know, they had to eat and use the facilities, do all those things, you know, the day-to-day minutia, but that's how you get to where you want to be.
That's right. That's right.
Before we've jumped right into things, but I do want to give a shout out to Lauren Downey for connecting us through American Marketing Association. And I think this might be a good segue into, you recently spoke in Chicago. Was that a pretty fun trip? And maybe you can tell people about the whole experience.
Yeah, that was a great time. Yeah, Lauren, I mean, my gosh, she was a great catalyst for a lot of things. So yeah, I met Lauren at a networking event that I throw and got, you know, different dots connected, and I got connected with the American Marketing Association. And so, yeah, they asked me to be a keynote speaker at their yearly leadership conference. So they have different chapters all over the country. And so I think there was about 200 or 250 people there in attendance. And I gave the keynote on Saturday, and the talk was getting things done in a world that doesn't want you to. Yeah, it's really like a lot of the things we're talking about here. It's like how to actually get tactile, like how to actually do, right? Do is greater than want. And so, yeah, it was a 45-minute talk and 15 minutes of Q&A. And it was really, really well received. I think a lot of people hearing feedback from them, they're just, they're overwhelmed, right? And they don't know how to choose, and they don't know how to pick, and they don't know how to say no. I think a lot of people like putting up boundaries, and people feel awkward putting up boundaries, but excuse me, boundaries is how we, if you allow someone to take your time, they'll take it. Like if I write you on Slack or I send you a text and you send me a text right back, well, I know you're always my priority becomes your attention. And so, it's anyway, so it was a lot about that. It was a lot about how to actually, like we're talking about, how to take those baby steps, but also how to put up those boundaries. And
yeah, I think that's a great point. Even like in the freelance world, putting up boundaries with your clients, if someone reaches out to you past 9 p.m., you don't have an obligation to respond
Correct.
to them. You can
Correct.
Tomorrow morning at a reasonable hour, you can respond.
Correct.
But I think that's a good point that you bring up. Like, how do you, part of that's also on you to establish those boundaries with the
Correct.
person. So like choosing not to, or saying, hey, I'll respond to you at a more reasonable hour.
Yeah.
It's kind of ownership on both parties, but it's I think that's huge.
And I think the funny mind meld you have to do on that for people listening is, I think we will be more respected and people will want to work with us more if we're there whenever they need us, if we're there 24/7, if we are the fireman that's there. But in actuality, you actually devalue yourself, right? Because if you are at my beck and call whenever I want, it's as if you're my servant. You're going to do whatever I ask you to. But if you say
your B word,
yeah,
as people used to say,
yeah. And if it's like, if all of a sudden you like don't get back to me, if you're like, I got it, Bassam, I'm working on a couple of things, I'll get back to you tomorrow. It's like, whoa. And I actually gain respect for that person. I think that's the funny thing. We think when someone, I'm really good at words and language and knowing people. So I always, when I reach out to someone, I want them to do what I want them to do. That's why I'm writing them. I want them to write me back first. Of course, that's what I don't want them to write me back in 5 days and put me at the bottom of the pile. None of us do. But what I found is the people I respect the most are the ones who don't just answer my beck and call or have hey, Bassam, no, I'm working on another project. How about tomorrow? Or how about the next day? I'm like, oh, damn. Like they got their stuff together. You know what I mean? Like I am not just there to dangle a bell in front of their eyes and they come running. And so I think people, again, it's this weird thing you have to think of, is like people gain, like you said, setting those boundaries early. One of my big things I say is like, never give anyone your bandwidth, or never tell what's your bandwidth like, right? People say that a lot in the corporate world. What's your bandwidth like? It's like, you don't get to know that. You know what I mean? Like, because what you're about to do is ask me to do something, like I would like a say in this. I have other priorities. And so, I mean, it's semantics, it's language, but boundaries are really like finding out how to say no. Asking by when, I think, is a great question for people new in things. Hey, can you get this back to me ASAP? ASAP isn't
so loose.
It's so loose. Like as soon as I can possibly do it, might be next week, So it's like, hey, by when do you need this? And force them to answer that question. If they say, can you do it by this afternoon? You're like, how about tomorrow midday? Or how about on Thursday? And so reminding yourself that this is a two-way conversation. You are not just somebody's receptacle for tasks, and your inbox is not your to-do list. And so it's hard because I think we want to feel like we're the exemplary client or customer or employee and all that kind of stuff. But no, if you let people take your time, they'll take it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So part of the talk was kind of the relationship aspect. Did you touch upon kind of creating boundaries or like eliminating distractions? Like I feel like there's all these things that are pulling for our time, I mean, we can hate on social media.
No, but I joke. I go, it's funny so the first thing I said is the first excuse anybody gives is I don't have enough time. And I joke, I was like, well, there's time if you want there to be time, but you have to choose to prioritize discomfort, right? Because when you say you don't have time to do that thing, what you're really saying is, I don't know what that thing's going to be, and it's messy and I'm not sure, and it's a bit vulnerable, so scrolling on Instagram is way easier. And so no one I've never heard anybody once say, God, I wish I had more time for Instagram. Right? Nobody's looking for more time. So how is that possible? How's it possible that we have all this time for Instagram, but we don't have time for the things we want to do? Well, that's because we're prioritizing ease and entertainment and laughter above the discomfort of working on something for 30 minutes. And so, reminding people of that, reminding people of this idea of owning your verbs, of kind of like, hey, being super intentional. It's okay to be on Instagram. It is totally okay to take a nap. It is totally okay to watch Netflix. I love sports. Like I spend a lot of time watching sports.
Yeah, I saw that you're Arsenal fan.
Yeah, huge Arsenal fan.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm not saying to not do those things, but it's about being intentional when you choose those things. I say all of that stuff, all of the escapes are an exhale task. And I said, all the hard stuff are an inhale task. Like, okay, it's time to work, right? And then when you're done, it's like, oh, okay. And so I'm saying, use those escapes on your exhale. Don't jump on Instagram on inhale time, right? When you carved out time in the morning and you have a free hour in the morning, don't check your bank account. Don't look at, Instagram. I go, you're wasting all this exhale time, on an inhale task. And so that's something like I try to get people to say is like, hey, it's fine to escape on social media, but do it after you did something a little bit difficult, and then feel like, oh, I earned this 10-minute escape, and then set a timer for 10 minutes and then have at it. Scroll and laugh and like and share and whatever. And then like when the timer goes off, and I know people joke like, oh, you really set timers? And it's like, yeah, these apps are designed that you never leave them, Yep. So yes, you literally, your brain just like detaches from reality, and like 5 minutes becomes 18 minutes, like so quickly. And it's like, were you owning your verb in that moment? No, you weren't. Like they were owning it. So by setting a timer is, hey, I'm owning this escape. Yep, I'm going to escape. I'm going to watch this game and it's 90 minutes, but I planned for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard people, I think it'll become more and more commonplace for people to carve out entertainment time. Like, hey, this is my time for relaxation.
Correct.
Especially in the day and age. I don't know if you use Calendly or some of these other apps for Acuity for scheduling, but like blocking out, the time that I want to use to go to the gym every day, that I feel like that's important.
Totally.
You're able to like stick to it, and whether or not you use it, at least it's there.
Yeah. And what you're doing is like, a lot of people say like having a when-do list is better than a to-do list. So like actually consciously thinking like, hey, I'm better in the morning at working out. Right. Or for some, like for me, I like it in the afternoon or evening. I feel better in that time. So it's knowing your body, right? So it's not just having it on a notepad, but it's like you said, it is slotting it in somewhere. And if that's working out, or like if you're writing or you want to write for film, or you need to edit something that you filmed, it's like, look, editing, I know takes a lot of energy, and I'm better in the evening. I'm a night owl. Okay. So then you're not going to be, you know what I mean? Then you can't watch that movie at night, your 8 to 10 time or whatever in the morning. And so creating when-dos for yourself is actually more important than just like, oh, here's my to-do list. It's like, well, how do I want to prioritize these tasks today? And the time I'm putting into doing them.
Totally. Yeah. I don't know if you've like broken out an entire like ideal day, like what that would look like, but it's kind of hard to do. And I've never actually like mastered the craft of doing that. But
yeah,
at one point I thought I was going to like wake up and like play video games for like 15-30 minutes, and that would be my day. But I realized that it just like put me in the totally wrong mindset,
right?
For like it's setting up for failure. And so
no, it's so true. For me, I'm a like, what is an uncomfortable verb I can own first, right? So that's writing. So I try not to do like the bank accounts or the like, just the stuff that's
the
like
small things that take away your energy.
Yeah. Like, oh, I like, because we like order too. So we like deleting emails, or like replying to emails. We like, it's like, ooh, look at these little things, but it's like whack-a-mole, right? You're just like pulling a little bit of weeds here and there, but you're like, if I can write, if I could do something, and even for work, even for my actual day job, if there's always like, complex things, whether we're writing blog posts or copy or whatever we're doing, if I can somehow for 30 or 60 minutes do that before anything else, I already won that day. You know what I mean? And then, and so I think this notion that like, I think we have an idea for our day when we start, but we forget once the day starts, the universe presses play, and everybody else's needs are going to come in that you didn't predict or plan for. It's like, oh, where did my day go? It's like, we have those feelings when we weren't realistic with ourselves, and we thought like, oh yeah, look at this, I had all this time, this 4 hours carved out for myself. Like 4 hours, like you're never going to get 4 hours like to yourself all day, because people are going to need things from you. And so carving out like literally 30-60 minutes at a stretch, and then being like, okay, now I can check my email, now I can reply to that thing. And so yeah, I think for me it would be like create like probably from 8 to 10 a.m. eat breakfast, and then 8 to 10 a.m. would be like no one can talk to me, no one can reach me. I mean, that'd be my kind of,
yeah, I consider like deep work, whereas like
exactly.
It uses the most creative resources. Yeah, for me, editing right in the morning. If I do this, just like you said, you win the day.
Yeah, everything else is house's money. Yeah, you're playing with house's money after that. If you're able to get some more later in the day, it's great. And I know for some people, they're crap in the morning. You know what I mean? Like they're just not, they're
just wired that way.
Right there. But then it's like, okay, they're after lunchtime. They're 1 to 3 is their magic hour. And it's like, okay, well, you got to defend that at all costs, So
yeah, that's such good advice. I always love the quote, like eating the frog.
That's right.
But if that's your type, some people, I think it's great that you can, just figure out what works for you and lean into that.
Yeah.
So I just want to be, cognizant of time and make sure that we talk about, do you want to talk about 71 and change a little bit? Sure. So you guys help big companies do challenging things and big discomfortable things, like maybe a rebrand or hiring a new CEO or something.
So we in essence, I mean, our tagline is we empower change. And I think, there's a lot of organizations that are, the speed of change is fast in the corporate world these days, and especially digital transformation and all this kind of stuff. So, we help organizations who are, let's say they are onboarding a whole new payroll system, HR system, or, organizations are splitting and people are going to have new job titles. We help in like basically making the pain of change less for your people. And so it's a lot of it on behavioral psychology, a lot of it is on communications, a lot of it like creative ways of training and learning, because I think, the old days was like a CEO was like, well, they just have to deal with it. So this change is coming, they'll figure it out. And it's like, okay, maybe, but there's a much more financially actually beneficial way of handling that change, of preparing. Are they aware? Do they know it's coming? Do they feel bought in? Do they feel like they have a say? Can they, you know what I mean? And so, because people can silently sabotage, people silently sabotage all the time,
this new software, I'm not going to use it.
Yeah, I couldn't work it. I couldn't log in, I couldn't, so we basically help organizations like make change suck less for their people, in a colloquial term, as colloquial as possible. But yeah, we have some pretty big orgs, some Fortune 100 companies, some Fortune 500 companies, that are, have like global teams, and when they're rolling things out and there's 41,000 people that are being impacted, it's like, okay, how are we doing that? So I did the client delivery side for a while, and I think my background, and I was an engineer by trade and got into storytelling, and I knew people, and so I was able to do that work for a while. And then I moved now more towards the back of house stuff. So we're doing our own rebrand right now, new website, from blog posts, and doing some PR work and all that kind of stuff. So I'm doing a lot of that work now for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you're like on this podcast and get to be kind of the face and get the message out there a bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool. I actually didn't think about that. You have the engineering kind of organization, like logistics brain, but then you also have the creative writing, and then like fusing those two skill sets makes you really unique.
Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out. I tell people that. I said I have the ability to look at things super analytically, and as an engineer, like take emotion out of it. Like I can get down to, okay, what is the problem statement? What are our variables? What are we solving for? Right? I'm like, what are we doing? And then I can slide the accordion to the other side. It's like, okay, but where's the nuance now when it comes to people? Like, yeah, okay, I know it's what we want to do, but now we're dealing with people, and how can we get them there? So yeah, I do feel it's a little bit of my superpower of having experience in both of those worlds, and knowing that it can't just all be about emotions, right? It's like, well, we still need a little bit of knowing the meat of this thing, and what are the gears here. So yeah, being able to slide either way has helped me in my career for sure.
That's awesome. I'm always just fascinated by what people bring, with their background and different skill sets, because there's only one you. And then I always find it interesting when people bring together different worlds. Like for me, it's like filming and music; those both play off of each other a lot.
Totally. And a lot of times, I think in the workforce, we don't even know what our coworkers are maybe are good at a lot of times. And then sometimes you like have these random conversations, like, "Oh my God, I didn't know you played the guitar. I didn't know you used to do X, Y, Z." And that, I mean, amazing magic happens, right? When you have that unique perspectives, right? When everyone's seeing in their own 3D, but when you bring in like everybody's 3D into a view, it's just like, some amazing things happen.
Yeah. And you never know until you ask, or it just kind of comes up in conversation.
Yeah.
Do you have any like case studies? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but do you have any briefly that you want to like talk through, or things that one that comes to mind that, this is where they were at? You don't even say names, but maybe the industry and what.
Yeah. I mean, some big ones we have, like, there is a huge manufacturing firm, like I was mentioning, and they were, in essence, switching over their whole HR system. This is like how people get paid, how they ask for support, you know what I mean? Time off, like the whole digital thing. And I think it was 41,000 people, 17 different countries. I think it was 8 different languages. And so it was like, how do you roll this out so that people, can you imagine the help desk if people didn't know, like, where's my paycheck? How come I didn't know, And so our team, did some really amazing, just amazingly creative kind of stuff. Like they created this podcast. So this organization had like points for people and their health points. And so people would go on walks. And so we created this podcast series that like we combined it with the group that was doing the walking thing and the health thing. Be like, hey, can you have people when they go on their walks listen to these and it was like basically podcasts of the changes that were coming at the company. So it's a really, right, who the hell wants to read another email or see another Slack message? But it was this really unique way where we had these short podcast interviews. I think they were like 10-15 minutes with the leaders at the organization, and there was a whole series of them. So just priming the pump, right, planting the seed in people's brains, so that they knew was coming. And so that was a huge that was one of like a really, really big one that we've done recently. So
that's amazing. Meeting them where they're at, meeting the employees where they're at, and
correct,
providing a way to create engaging and entertaining content.
That's right. So yeah, and we're working with a very well-known global brand right now who has a lot of different properties and assets and casinos and hotels and all this kind of stuff. And they are working on a reward or a reward system and like an identity system. So like your card here works in this city and it also works in that city, and all that kind of stuff. So like, thinking through, okay, how would this be created? How do we roll this out? How does the staff know? How do potential guests and customers know? So when you stop and you imagine, like, holy crap, like that seems like a lot. It is a lot, but our team just really damn good at that world. And really it's really about process. Like for us, it's really about like being able to ask the right questions along the way, right? It's like preemptively thinking of all like the pre-mortems, like, hey, here's what would go wrong if we don't do this correctly. You know what I mean? And here's why we need to communicate it this way. And here's why we need to repeat that over and over again. Here's why we need to put you in front of camera. And here,
that's amazing. That's like so much 3D chess going on.
Literally. Yeah. You're like it's like Minority Report. You're like seeing things left and right. And it's, you keep peeling back the onion, right? I mean, I think it's real easy. Like, oh, this is what we want at the end. And it's like, okay, how do we get there? As people, like getting your people there, because your people are, as we
that movie's kind of freaky, by the way.
That movie is freaky.
Minority Report. It might be becoming more of a reality.
Totally. But I like to say, like, change, for it to go well, change should happen with your people, not to them. That's our big thing. Like, your people should feel like, hell yeah, we knew this was coming. Like, we understand what's coming. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I love how it kind of all plays into everything that you've been talking about. Like, you're helping people get through discomfort with them. You're like kind of alongside them rather than. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was a crazy opportunity that came my way. So I think I spoke the language of change management before knowing it was a discipline, right? I didn't really I think, yes, I was probably doing like personal change management for folks and how I told people to attack their lives and creative endeavors. And then seeing it as a discipline in the corporate world was really, I was like, oh, I get this. Like, I see what we're trying to do. I understand why. So yeah, that was a nice marriage as far as my skills and that opportunity, for sure.
That's awesome. Is there anything, so because a little bit of your background is coaching, you're helping people, maybe one-on-one consulting as well, but is there one small thing that you see people doing that could, or one small thing that people could begin doing that would make a big difference
Yeah, I think you know, when it comes to getting things done, I think that it's the New Year's resolution effect. I think that trips up a lot of people. So a lot of times I tell people do less than you're capable of. I think a lot of times people, as soon as they're excited, they're like, that's it. I'm gonna 4 hours a day, or I'm gonna exercise 4 days a week. And then what happens, like I was saying, is like in the beginning, we are like a crab that's just molted. We don't have a shell yet. And so if we hurt ourselves, if we ding ourselves, it's gonna hurt. And so I tell people, like, do less than you're capable of in the beginning. Like, the point isn't to make the right decision. The point is to get to new decisions. And so I think, like, people are like, well, I got to work out this many days a week. I have to do this creative thing, you know, this much. And then 3 weeks later, you're like burnt out, right? And you weren't appreciating how much new was going to be difficult. New decisions, new checkpoints, new, oh my God, I was filming this thing. I thought the story was going to go this way, but man, that doesn't make sense anymore. And what do I think about that? How should that feel? And that's a magic moment. That, like, reflection is what we're all looking for, right? We're looking to get to that next horizon. And so I tell people, like, it's great to have a goal, but if that goal weighs you down, it's useless, you know? So forget about trying to take a sailboat from New York to Lisbon. Like, just paddle in a cardinal direction, you know? Like, once you get over the horizon, there'll be different currents, there'll be different winds, you may run into an island, and then you make a different choice over there. And so it's like both having a goal and not having a goal, and like just doing less than you're capable of. So I think a lot of people in the beginning, they just burn so hot so quick because they think they know what they want, and they're trying to make the world bend to their desires. And it's like, no, just like, this is a hypothesis. It's just a guess. Like, go out and see if that's true.
Yeah, just start knocking on things and see what happens.
Yeah, just see what happens, and let that be success. Let you doing the thing and owning the verb, and like you said, exercise, like whether it's exercise or film or whatever, like just own those small things. So I think, like, the one thing I think for people is they put too much pressure on this end result that they're imagining that it should look like, and trying to sprint for it, of trying to just, like, Jerry Maguire, a moment of just like pure, I'm going to write this manifesto in one night and then it's done. It's like, that's not how it works. You know what I mean? Like, our lives are messier than that. So I think, like, one of the things is do less you're capable of, and like be kind to yourself. Like, you're not supposed to know how it's going to end. Like, we're not oracles, and
yeah, we're humans and we're not robots either.
Yeah. And it's like, you're doing something new, ergo you are a newbie, ergo you don't know what you're doing. Like, that is just the fact. You cannot be a film director until you've pressed record on a camera for a while. And so it's just reminding oneself of that it moves slower than you think, and never looks like you thought it would when you got there. And so do less than you're capable of, and be nicer to yourself, I think, is what I tell everybody. Like, I don't do that much. People think, like, how do you do everything you do? I go, no, I'm just extremely intentional with the minutes that I choose to focus. And I mean, sometimes it's 20 minutes a day. Sometimes, if I can get it, 90 or 120 minutes, but like, that's like max. I'm not doing anything super creative for more than an hour and a half or 2 hours a day, just because there's other things going on in my life. But that repeated over 30 days, if you did 1 hour a day for 30 days, 30 hours of uninterrupted work, of deep work, is insane. Like, you know that, like 30 hours of like filming and editing, you're like, oh yeah, you know what I could do in 30 hours. And so I think people forget that. And so it's like, it's about the track record. It's not the spark, you know. It's like,
moving the lever just a little bit each day.
Just a little bit. It's simple. It's not easy. And I think intuitively we all know that, right? I tell people A to Z is just A to B 26 times. You know, they're getting tripped up on LM, N, and O. It's like, you're at A. Like, that LM, N, and O won't look like you thought it would look when you get there. Just A to B, A to B, A to B, A to B, right? Just keep repeating that and patting yourself on the back for getting to B, you know, and stop waiting for the clap at Z, because then the A to Y is like miserable.
Yeah. I love that. And it's a good like visual for people of, all the like kind of little reps that add up. And going to the gym is like a good example.
Exactly.
You can easily burn yourself out, or, you know, you push too hard and you get stressed. And it's same with like, you push too hard with video editing, or you push too hard with writing. I find I pay for it somehow. So if I put in like 3 hours one day, then the next day I feel like way less motivated. And
That's such a
it's
great,
just kind of, it
no,
depends.
it's such a great way to, you pay for it somehow. Such a great sentence. It's like, you're gonna have to do the work anyway. Like you said, you're gonna pay for it one way or the other. And so you can't circumvent the work. Like, that's just it. You can't circumvent the work.
Yeah, you can say like, I'm gonna skip lunch, I'm just gonna push through, but then you're hungry later, and then your metabolism's all out of whack, and then you can't sleep at night because you ate too late. Like, it's just kind of taking care of yourself, showing up so you can provide the,
another great quote on that is like, I think a lot of people are like, I want to have a great day. I want to have a great day. I was like, no, don't have a great day. Like, put a bunch of good days together and the result will be great, because I tell people, like, you have to be in a good enough mood tonight to wake up tomorrow to do it all over again. So it's not worth, like you said, burning the midnight oil, skipping dinner. Let me blast through this. And then it's like, yeah, but then what about the next 2 days? So
is that sustainable? No.
Yeah, it's not about this ephemeral, like, oh, I wrote my magnum opus, in an 8-hour stretch. Like, no, good luck. That's never gonna happen.
The movies make it look so sexy.
Oh, they do. They do.
Oh man. Well, just like kind of one kind of last segment that we can wrap up on. You mentioned sports. Do you want to talk about like sports and their impact? I've become a bigger and bigger proponent. I've been starting to play soccer more with
awesome.
Everyone's kind of in their own situation with COVID. Definitely take care of your own precautions. But for me, it's been nice to get outside and play with other people. And it gives me some of that community and just people to talk to other than my wife, who gets sick of working at home with me, I think sometimes. But do you, what does sports mean to you? And have those been helpful in your career?
Sports have been everything to me. Sports is like, to ask my wife, it's like every analogy I use, every story I tell, like I cry watching sports. If there's like music and sports together, like I'm probably crying. Some story about a team who didn't think they could win or were knocked down, So I think what I love about sports, just what it does for us as people is, it teaches you a lot about life, right? It teaches you about having to work with folks who maybe not think the way you do. It teaches you about like, mindsets, right? About how like, hey, the favorite should always beat the underdog. I mean, they're better than them, right? I mean, look at the spread. And it's like, well, that doesn't always happen because you still have to play the game. And so, it taught me discipline and leadership and, all those things as a kid. But I think what I love watching about sports, and let's just call it what it is, it's live theater. Like I love soccer, I love basketball, and it's live theater, right? It is a ad-libbed show. The rules. I think the great thing about it while watching it is for soccer is a 90-minute escape. There is bounds on it. And I know the fantasy world I'm jumping into, right? I enter that world and I'm like, yep, the rule is they have to kick this ball and that this is offsides and this is whatever. And so what I love about it is like, it's us versus them. There is passion. There is winning and losing. There's a winner and loser. And so as a viewer, I love the escape. I love the commitment of it. I think there is there was a awe and wonder at athletic achievements as well. But I don't know, man. I just, I love competition. Like I really love competition and people who are backs against the wall and how they react and all that kind of stuff. And then getting able to leave that fantasy. And so what I like about it is like sometimes social media or some other things, it's like a movie, you just enter it. You're like, this is how long I'm going to enter it. And then I can hop out. So I love playing it. I love what it's done for my own life. I'm very health conscious and exercise quite a bit. And I love watching just for the competition's sake and the escape.
Definitely. I totally agree. And all the lessons and things I've learned from it. And then like you mentioned, you're kind of glued in. I know there's a pretty big influencer that I follow, and he looks like he's always doing stuff, but he likes the New York Jets, and that's like his one escape is New York Jets. But what I love about, if we can toot the soccer horn, is there's no commercials. They play for 45 minutes, no commercial breaks. Whereas all these other sports, there's every 15 seconds, every minute, there's a commercial break, or they're cutting to someone else, they're showing someone on the sideline.
Exactly.
But soccer, it's the one where it's
like hypnotic chess at times. I think my wife's like 0-0 again, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not about the 0-0, right? It's like a little bit of like trench warfare, and it's like chess, and so there's a beauty that there's a beauty to like unlock is a word they use in soccer. Like how do you unlock the defense? And so it's like, you know, figuring out the combination to unlock is fun to watch. Yeah. So there's a little bit of chess, you know, involved in soccer as well that I appreciate.
Yeah. Where the coaches are putting different players, getting the matchups right. Like can this guy, is he faster on the wing? Can he get past the defender? And you know, it's pretty exciting, just the tactics and
for sure.
Yeah. I think theater, it does it all.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, you know, to wrap things up, I mean, because Arsenal beat Chelsea the other day and they beat Man United. So, I saw on your Twitter, I was doing all my research beforehand and found some of those old tweets.
Things I don't want to talk about. I don't want to jinx them. But
don't jinx it.
They're on an upswing. They're on an upswing. So knock on wood.
Yeah. Well, Bassam, this has been an amazing podcast episode. I really appreciate your time hopping on. There's a ton of other things to talk about, so maybe in the future it'd be great to bring you back on. But for now, I hope the audience got a lot out of kind of learning all things about how to push yourself. And
I'll tell your audience on my website. I'm sure you'll link to it, but on Bassam.com, I have this new playbook called Double Your Free Time. The five secrets to getting more white space on your calendar. So if anybody's interested in learning some of those tactics, it's there for free.
Yeah, maybe you can. We have time. If you want to actually talk a little bit more about that program, feel free to.
Yeah, it's literally just you know, everyone's always asking me how do you you know, how do I get more free time? How do I do that stuff? So this is just a free resource. So it's kind of like I go pretty deep on carving out that elbow room for yourself. And then I have an online course called Ready Set Finish, which is again it's like a 5-module course and there's 14 lessons and really taking people step by step. You know, to doing the things they say they want to do. So I'll leave it at that right now. My time, I got to run, but yeah, that's I'm always about trying to help people again, help them do the things they say they want to do, so they can get from here's what I want to do to here's what I finished.
That's awesome. Well, thank you to Bassam. Everyone, you can find all of the links in the show notes. And until next time.
You got it. Thanks, Brian. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for checking out the Tactics Media podcast. Please let us know if you have any questions, anything that we can help with. We're here for you. Did you find this podcast valuable? Please subscribe and turn on those notifications. If you feel compelled, let us know how we're doing. Leave us a review.